Welcome to a Monday edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm your host, John Gonzalez, alongside our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, and somewhere in the office, not in the studio, but somewhere in the office, Ashley Nicole Moss. What's up, gang?
You guys have, hold on. This is a t-shirt. I'm going to go.
Get cash.
I liked your jacket. Why'd you take it off?
Because you guys have like sweatshirts on, and I look like I'm just like interviewing you guys, and okay, we're good.
Now you're comfy. Now you're ready to rock.
Now we're ready to go.
All right, everybody's ready to rock. Later in the show, Pacers take a commanding 3-1 lead. The Clips tie up their series with the Mavs. We have so much to get to today. Unfortunately, this is one of the topics as well. The Knicks take over that particular series and the Sixers arena in the process. But first, wow. The Wolves sweep the Suns. They win game 4, 122-116. It is the first playoff series win in 20 years for Minnesota. It is only the third series that they've ever won in franchise history. Here's one more for you. No Minnesota team in any sport, not the Wolves, not the Twins, not the Lynx. They got a hockey team. I think it's the Wild. No Minnesota team has ever swept a 7-game series. Who, aside from me, could have seen this coming? Bill?
Bill, make it rain, Bill.
Oh, well, look, John, congratulations. You didn't just win that bet. You dominated. Thanks. God, what an idiot I am. Believing in the Phoenix Suns. I'm a moron. I deserved it. So, yeah, I'd rather be Arthur J because I know the $1,000 will go far. It's a steakhouse here if Ash gets back out to LA. But if not, it'll be hopefully the finals. We're all hanging. Pick a place. $1,000. Let's go. Thanks, Phoenix, you bums. What a bunch of bums.
I just want to go on record and say I'm a winner either way. So the real winner here is me.
Yes.
But in terms of basketball, I mean, look, I think I had the Suns. Obviously, you guys had your bet, so you were on different ends of it.
You had the Suns, Bill had the Suns, and producer Aaron had the Suns.
Vegas had the Suns by a margin.
Let's be honest here. Had the Suns lost this series, but it was a competitive one, I don't think any of us would have been really surprised. There were a lot of issues with this team from, its beginning stages to after All-Star break down the stretch. So had they lost, 3-2 or 4-2 rather, or, a gentleman's sweep, if you will, I don't know if we would have been surprised, but a sweep when you have Kevin Durant and Devin Booker is just absolutely insane. It's asinine. It's crazy. It's just, there's a lot of layers to this. Can I sweep? Can I throw in
a word? Asinine's a good one that I got from a top level Suns executive who I was texting with today, who was very optimistic. I'm not saying I blame this person for the bet, but was very optimistic. Utter and total disaster. Don't know what's going to happen here.
Did you ever end up sharing any of your action on this thing?
No, Jared Greenberg, everybody just bailed. You know why? Because they'd seen them play. I tried to be optimistic. I tried to reverse jinx you. And we saw this last night. Even when Durant and Booker were both amazing, and Booker wasn't amazing the first 3 games, Bradley Beal was so broken and so washed, and that team seems to have turned so much on Frank Vogel that, no, I think other people knew, as I might have deep down, that I was in deep trouble. I didn't know, John, it would be this bad, though. This was an ass-kicking.
I think it's crazy, too, and I just spoke about this on HQ, and Aaron just put this in the chat also, but, when you're researching it, there were signs that maybe this series could have been relatively more competitive because of how well the Suns did against the Timberwolves in the regular season. And I know, look, regular season playoffs come around. What you did in the regular season doesn't really matter, but it is a gauge to some degree on how you will match up with a particular team, especially when you've seen them multiple times throughout the season. We're not talking about a one and done. We're talking about 3 times they have seen this team in the regular season, and each time they have won that game. So nobody in their right mind would have used that as a gauge for the playoffs and think they were just going to go completely on the opposite end of the spectrum in a playoff series. And they did, and it's insane.
I think the biggest difference between the regular season and the postseason is the emergence of Anthony Edwards. He has been absolutely, we have talked about this kid being, next. He's 22 years old, and the Timberwolves, we talked about their offensive flaws, their limitations, whatever, but they're at least in this first series, very much built for the postseason, right? They play through the defense. postseason basketball slows down. You shorten your rotations. It gets a little tougher out there. I'm sorry. I got a guy outside my window right now with a leaf blower who it's insanely. It's like I'm in a wind tunnel right now. It's ridiculous. But anyway, Anthony Edwards just is like made for postseason basketball. He was exceptional again last night. He went for 49 and 6. He was 6 of 7 from the floor in the fourth quarter. Let me tell you something else about how good this kid was during this series in the fourth quarter. He averaged 10.5 points per game, which is more than any other player in any series in the fourth quarter. He made 67% of his shots from the floor in the fourth quarter, which is outrageous. And he's shot 67% from 3 in the fourth quarter, and he hasn't missed a free throw in the fourth quarter. That's what you do in a series that you want to win, with your star player stepping up and looking like a star.
That dunk was absolute insanity. He had that pass where he kind of reached around 2 guys and sort of whipped it over the baseline, which was, he hit huge. I mean, look, he looks, from a playing perspective, I know this is hyperbolic, but it was Jordan-esque because he took over the game. He hit shots. He has this crazy swagger. He talks smack. I don't know if you saw the post game, but there's this amazing exchange with Karl Anthony Towns where Ant, the 22-year-old, is talking about, he told the veterans, stop fouling people, stop getting in foul trouble. We need you. He's clearly at 22, the leader of the team. John, and I'll say this.
Question for you guys. I have a question
I'll
for
even
you guys.
answer, sorry, just real quick. I think that, to your point, I think Cat going down in the regular season was actually a huge blessing in disguise, because it allowed Anthony Edwards to take over and level up. Excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you, buddy.
No, you're right about that. And also, by the way, Cat was awesome last night at both ends of the floor. He went for 28 and 10.
Does that change your mindsets at all? It was interesting inside the NBA after the game, or maybe it was halftime. No, I think it was after the game, where the guys were discussing, I think that everyone was kind of on the side of like, 2 bigs can't play together. When they got Rudy Gobert, it was like, how's this going to work? I mean, granted, the Suns are not the pinnacle of like perfection, so I don't know how much you can gauge if this works, but does it change your mind at all on if the duo of Gobert and Cat, 2 bigs, can actually work together?
I mean, I've been sold all season. All season. You guys know that we do the show together, and I kept going, I don't know, the proof is in their performance. They were at the top of the Western Conference all season long, and they've looked really good. They figured, look, last year it didn't look like it worked. This year it looked like it worked from the beginning, and everybody kept waiting for it to fall apart, and it hasn't. And they were awesome in the playoffs together in the first round.
And let me just keep heaping praise on Edwards, because last night Durant was good, really good, maybe great, and Booker was sensational. I mean, those 2 dudes scored 82 points. They were, especially Booker was so good, and the best player on the floor with Anthony Edwards. And so that, for me, is the mind-blowing. You're out there with a 2-time former champion, 2-time finals MVP in Durant, a guy that made a finals with Booker, who's a world-class player. They're both future Hall of Famers. They're both vets. They've both been through battles where they're supposed to be able to handle these moments and win at least one of these games. And Ant was the best player on the floor and the most effective player on the floor at the end of the game. So I think for me, that's the main. He might be so good that anybody can play with him. He might be so good. Maybe I'm getting carried away. But the thing about Steph or LeBron or Jordan, these all-time greats in terms of winning, is that they make players and systems and coaches and GMs look better than they are. And Anthony Edwards, I mean, he's the guy that has taken a losing franchise and made them winners. It's him.
He's been unbelievable at both ends of the floor. And I put this in our text chain last night, but I want to just bring it up before we go and do the obit on the Suns. SGA is expected to finish second in the MVP race, possibly third if Luka ends up usurping him and finishing second. But he's going to be in a top 5 MVP candidate this season. Who wins an award? Who wins the MVP first, Ant or SGA? Because it's toss up for me right now.
Anthony Edwards.
I think so too.
Yeah. I think that
I don't think it's the wrong answer. It's just mind blowing because SGA is in the running right now.
I think that this season kind of cemented, if you weren't paying attention to Anthony Edwards, you're paying attention now. And I think SGA and OKC have kind of had somewhat of a moment, like, not that everyone's like running to watch OKC games, except for John, that's his hometown. But like
OKC and Wolves.
I don't think anybody's running to like watch OKC games, just like I don't think anyone's running to watch Wolves games. But I think that this playoff season specifically, and how Anthony Edwards was able to take down one of the best players we have ever seen in Kevin Durant, and his idol at that, has just added a different layer, a different narrative to his already impressive and growing resume. That I just think that what he's able to do with that, I think, is a little bit more of a push than SGA right now. Although I wouldn't be surprised if SGA did it, because OKC is the better team overall. I think Anthony Edwards may have the slight edge in terms of like the eyes on him in terms of the better player.
I think it's a great point. I think if you look at MVP awards over the years, a lot of them are impacted by what happened in the previous postseason. For Embiid, no offense, John, it was Embiid complaining about not getting the award last year that I think swayed a bunch of. I know we weren't doing the pod yet, but I knew that he was going to win that award if he had a great season, because he had complained so much, which narratives matter. And this year, you go back to Jokic, who has always been amazing, but he won a championship. So all those Jokic doubters or folks who didn't want to vote for him, or he doesn't win in the playoffs, they couldn't stand on that anymore. And I think what he's doing now, Anthony Edwards, sets him up. And if they battle the Nuggets, or hell, man, I don't think they will, but I'm done doubting Minnesota nor bets. If they beat the Nuggets, like, yes,
I'm so excited about that series. I still think it's the Nuggets in that series, but it's going to be so fun. Less fun, especially if you are living in Phoenix, is what happened with the Suns this season. Everybody was expecting that their big three would at least make them relevant and challengers in the Western Conference. That turned out not to be the case. Can't get out of the first round. Bill mentioned how good Booker and Durant were last night. They combined for 82 points, 14 rebounds, 11 assists, 82% true shooting percentage.
Oh.
None of it mattered because Bradley Beal was absolutely brutal in that game. He was brutal in the series. He was horrible as a lead defender on Anthony Edwards, although who's going to defend Anthony Edwards? As we just mentioned, he's been amazing. But they are locked into this team unless they trade one of the two big guys, Beal or Kevin Durant. And I don't think they want to do that, but that's really the kind of their only option here. Or they can run it back, which is also a bad option.
They don't control their draft picks from 25 to 30. I mean, sorry, go ahead. It's just, what a mess.
Yeah, I think also you talk about trading, but after what we just saw, I mean, Kevin Durant, I feel like will always have a trade market because it's Kevin Durant. I feel like what he's done in the league kind of speaks for itself. So I feel like his trade market's always there. But at this point, when you saw what Bradley Beal just did, why would you want him? More importantly, why would you want that salary? I mean, $161 million are owed to him, 50, 54, 57
Plus
million.
a no trade clause. Can't move him unless he wants to get moved.
Yeah, he has a no trade clause, so he can determine whether or not he wants to get moved. That's a lot of cash to owe somebody who, I mean, what did he do? You know what I mean? Like
3 more years.
Yeah.
He was,
and on the way he fouled out, he slapped. You guys, I'm sure you saw. He slapped
Noble's hand away
and undermined. And I know there's a report from Shams that, and this obviously at Shams it's true, but there is clearly some issues with Vogel and his possible survival. But just undermining your coach publicly, and you just fouled out, and you played like garbage. He is a mess.
Fouled out.
Not only that, Bill, but there was a report from The Athletic that Vogel gave this like passionate speech in the locker room, and he was very upset. We're better than this, like very much like bearing his soul, if you will. And people said that it came across very forced, very performative, and one player had to prevent himself from laughing at him. That's not good. Like, you just got swept.
No,
it's not good. And Beal was really bad as a lead defender on Anthony Edwards. And again, it's Anthony Edwards, and he really like leveled up in this series. But as the lead defender, Anthony Edwards went for 17 for 31 against Bradley Beal in the series. And Bradley Beal actually just rattled off how much money he's owed. 50, 54, and 57 million coming up. Can't be moved unless he wants to be moved. You're probably not moving Booker because he's the face of the franchise. That really only leaves you KD to move, but you traded everything to get him in the first place. So it's like rocking a hard place here. I want to run this.
He's complaining though. KD was complaining about his role in the offense. So
yeah, I know. All of a sudden now you might think like, because you could move KD and potentially get something back from him, but I want to run this past you guys. He's going to be 36 next year to start the season.
Yeah.
They can sign him this offseason to an extension for his age 38 season at $60 million. Are you extending him?
Yes.
I don't think you have a choice. And also like, listen,
for 38,
I'm not gonna say that KD cares immensely what the public thinks, but I think he cares to a degree. And
Nobody cares more. Oh, Ash.
yeah, I think it's kind of, he teeters back and forth, right? I think sometimes
Yeah.
he doesn't care, and I think there's a part of him though that does care. And I think that after the Warriors saga, when he left Golden State, went to Brooklyn, and it was supposed to be he was going to win it on his own because he had James Harden and Kyrie, and it was going to be a big FU to the Golden State Warriors and everyone who doubted him and said that he was only, you know, a champion because the Golden State Warriors helped him get there. This was supposed to be, you know, what changed that narrative. And obviously it didn't work. And then you go to Phoenix and you're expecting similar results, a big FU. I don't need Brooklyn. I can go ahead and win them. And you haven't done that. And now you just got swept. I would be very, very surprised if Kevin Durant once again jumped ship and went someone else. I cannot see him doing that. It would be a travesty for his legacy to jump ship once again to a different team. And I think
what's the
there's
difference?
just enough that he won't do that.
Well,
What's
to
the
your
difference? He already left a bunch.
I think he could leave, but to Ash's point, if he doesn't, and to your point, John, if he wants to stay, I think he had a great, by the way, had a great season, played a bunch of games. I mean, the guy was awesome. If you're going to roll with Durant and Booker and a wash Beal, you have to probably move on from Frank Vogel, fair or not, because the fact that, and I talked about this in the radio show, the fact that report came out the moment the game was over, that is not Shams being super connected with the water boy or one of Vogel's staff or even somebody in the front office and the details of it. That is somebody on that team. And again, I think Shams is amazing. It's not criticism, but he has cornered the market on relationships at that level with superstars, whereas Woj is more of an agent guy. I know Shams does agents too. That's coming from one of those guys. I mean, I'm speculating, but that is coming from one of those guys. It shows that Vogel has probably lost all three of them. And I think you saw that Booker's comments, Durant's comments over the course of the series and last night, and Bradley Beal sort of aggressively swatting the hand away. Vogel doesn't have a team outside of those three guys, maybe Grayson Allen. He's lost the only three guys that actually can play at a level that matters. So that Shams report is really noteworthy, Ash, because that is undermining him and punching him where the sun don't shine the moment that thing ended. Who knows if Ishbia wants cover, because this is cover, and I know that the folks that are close to Ishbia went from being as arrogant as that owner to now as worried that eventually they're going to get blamed. And a guy like Vogel does provide you someone else to look at and blame if things go wrong. But he was
asked about it. He was asked about it the other day and said that he feels fully confident in that Matt Ishbia will bring him back, which is like the kiss of death. But beyond that, like, this isn't on Frank Vogel. I mean, they might hang it on Frank Vogel. They might make him the scapegoat because
100%.
They need a scapegoat, because you can't get rid of you can't get rid of at least one of those guys and probably two of those guys, which only leaves you KD. So you might be running it back anyway. But this is a failure of roster. No, I don't think so. Look, I look at their team. They finished 13th in defense. That team has no business being anywhere near the top 10 in defense. Offensively, they don't. Bill just mentioned that they have three guys and Nurk and Grayson Allen, and they bring Eric Gordon off the bench, and that's it. They're like hyper thin. It is not a good roster construction. They traded Ishbia came in.
It's Ishbia's fault.
If you were giving out blame percentages, right? How much of a percentage would you give to Vogel, and how much would you be giving out to everybody else?
Ishbia 98%, and then you can divide the 2% however you want after that. Okay. I think. Oh well, you know what,
Ishbia, a lot of it, and then beyond that, Beal a considerable amount.
Okay.
Although they asked him to do something that, he hasn't really. He's going to be the third guy. He's not. He's lost stuff. They don't play basketball well. They didn't really have a traditional point guard. The roster is. I lay it all on the front office.
So quick follow up then. If that's how you feel towards the Suns, then when you look at the Lakers, for example, do you not put any blame on Darvin Ham, or does he get more blame than you get from Vogel?
That's much more nuanced and complicated. I think that's complicated. I think
that's
not
a winning roster either.
No, well, they made a conference finals last year. I mean, they're not as you're right, but they're not as hampered as the Suns. I mean, the Suns have no reset for what feels like 6 years. I mean, it's not going to be that long necessarily, but they don't have draft picks. They're in the second apron. By the way, those three guys next year are going to make what, $150 million. The tax threshold is 141, I think, is the new, and the new CBA is designed to continue to squeeze the margins and the distances between big markets and small markets. So they're in the second apron, which not to get too into the weeds, but their ability to make
Super
trades,
restrictive.
it's so
super restrictive on how you can build. You're basically looking at the same team with minimum contract guys coming in to surround them. So yeah, it's a little bit different than the Lakers because the Lakers have more levers that they can pull. But same deal, Ash. I look at Darvin Ham and I go, there's a lot of other reasons why they lost beyond Darvin Ham.
But he's a bad coach, I think, potentially, whereas Frank Vogel is not. I do think I'm not sure it's Ham's.
Frank Vogel making this team like a serviceable defensive team is like,
and Frank
that team, I don't know how.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Frank Vogel in all his years of coaching has ever been swept. So
well neither had Bradley Beal, and now he has too.
I don't think Frank Vogel has ever been swept as a head coach. Like he's never been coaching
right?
That's been swept. I'm pretty sure.
Did you see the meme on Twitter? Like it's Pelinka calling Vogel like, "Hey, you still up, man? I miss you." I mean, it's
tough times in the Valley of the Sun. All right, we're going to take a quick break here, and then we're going to talk about other tough times in a different series on the East Coast. Wow. Hasn't gone well for Philadelphia. Has gone very well for the New York Knicks. That's next coming up on Beyond the Arc.
Europa League semi-finals on CBS Sports Network and streaming live on Paramount+. You were made for this.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. John, Ashley, and Bill here. You can find us wherever you find your favorite podcast. Please download, subscribe, and leave us a review. All right, the Knicks win in Philadelphia, 97-92. They take a commanding 3-1 lead. Knicks fans all over the Wells Fargo Center. We can discuss that.
That's crazy.
They just were everywhere in this before we even get to the ramifications. So somebody tweeted about that Knicks fans are like cicadas, and I apologize to whoever this was, but I loved it because it was so clever. The Knicks fans are like cicadas because they disappear for 17 years and then they won't stop chirping. And I was like, perfect.
That's hilarious. But you know what's funny? That's such a Northeast thing. Like people from the South, I don't think know what cicadas even are because they don't exist like in Florida and stuff. Like that's such a Northeast like
they will this week
calling someone a cicada. Coming. I was terrified as a kid because people who don't know cicadas like leave their shells wherever and then they go up into the trees and that's how they make the noise. When I was a kid, I used to be terrified of the little like exoskeletons that they.
I used to collect them.
Oh my god, they used to. Now I used to have.
There's a trillion of them coming. There's a once in a 250-year thing happening in the next week or two.
Yeah. Aaron's like, are they birds? No, they're insects. They have a skeleton that they shed and they go up into the tree.
They make that noise. Anyway,
And the shells are like they're highly annoying.
But so all right, we'll start with the takeover before we get into how amazing Brunson was. So the Knicks fans always travel well. They were all over the Wells Fargo Center. So to add insult to injury, that not only did the Sixers end up blowing this game, they were awful in the fourth quarter, but Knicks fans celebrated afterwards, which did not go over well with Joel Embiid. And here's what he had to say about that.
Disappointing. I love our fans. I think it's unfortunate. And I'm not calling it now, but it is disappointing. Obviously, you got a lot of these fans, and they're down the road that never seen it. And I've been here for 10 years. Kind of pissing me off, especially because Philly is considered us full time. So, they've always shown up, and I don't think that should happen. It's not okay.
This will shock you guys, but that did not go over great in Philly. Immediately, the Philadelphia Inquirer came after him. WIP, the big sports radio station, came after him. The fans are angry because he did not play well in the fourth quarter and acquit himself, even though I think he's been excellent in this series. It just the hits keep coming.
Yeah, but
he's been excellent in the series, but not in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. When we previewed the series, like I brought this up, like he statistically in the postseason does not play well in the fourth, so that shouldn't be surprising to Sixers fans that like he hasn't played well in the fourth. That's kind of like his running thing, but
it can't be his thing if they're going to win a series, though.
I get it. I'm just saying it shouldn't be a surprise. That's always kind of been his thing. He plays really well for the first three quarters. In the fourth, he's a non-factor 9 times out of 10. So
in the fourth quarter, real quick. 1 point, 0 for 5 from the floor, 1 for 2 from the line. He was -4. He played all 12 minutes. The whole team was absolutely brutal in the fourth quarter. They had just 3 points in the final 5 minutes. All of them were free throws. They missed their last 10 field goal attempts, Bill.
Yeah, he is 3 of 18 in the fourth quarter so far this series. There's a stat making the rounds that I have our research people confirming because I have trouble believing it, but I'll just give it to you because it's out there. The stat is that in 21.2% of Joel Embiid's postseason games, he has failed to make a field goal in the fourth quarter. 1 out of, I mean, that is an utter disappearing act if it's true. I mean, to your point, Ash, I love Joel Embiid. He's one of my favorite players in the NBA. I just think he's funny and he's fun to watch. And I'm not a Sixers fan like John. I love the guy, but he's been a bum late in games. He did have a great fourth quarter in the game that the Sixers won, which is obviously connected. And his Draymond Green heel turn, crazy dirty playing, you can't be that dirty and be that bad. You at least have to be a winner like Draymond is. For me, this is a game changer, I think, for him reputationally. If he doesn't,
yeah, I mean, I think when I looked at the stat earlier when we previewed this series, it was like in 48 postseason games, he was averaging like 5.4 points in the fourth quarter. I don't know how he gets those. I don't know if they're out the line. I don't know if they're in the paint, but that's like roughly his number. I mean, in terms of like the Knicks fans entering Wells Fargo, like, look, 76ers tickets are a lot cheaper than Garden playoff tickets. Those tickets can run you minimum $250 a piece, and that's for like not even the greatest seats. So, if you're priced out, 2-hour drive, you don't need a hotel, you don't need it, you just drive in, drive out. And granted, if you actually did the numbers, I would think that the 76ers fans did still outnumber the Knicks fans that were there. I don't believe they bought up every single ticket. The Knicks fans were just louder. And that's why
they had more to cheer for.
They had more to cheer for. They were louder. And that's probably why it seemed like it was more impactful or less of a home court advantage for the 76ers because they were louder. They were more in your face. They were more aggressive. But if you really did the numbers, Philly fans definitely were the majority. They just stopped caring. Like after a while, you're just like, whatever.
There was, I mean, like I said, Knicks fans, Mets fans, they always travel really well. A bunch of tickets got put up on the secondary market. You don't know who you're selling the tickets to. Ashley mentioned it's a 2-hour drive. It's only an hour and a half if you hop on the train, takes you right from Penn Station underneath MSG, right to 30th Street Station in Philadelphia. Nice little Sunday afternoon for Knicks fans. Terrible Sunday afternoon for Philadelphia. We haven't even talked about how this happened. I mean, like we've gone all this way into the show and we haven't talked about Jalen Brunson, who was outrageously good.
Wow.
I mean, like the Knicks, I've said this on several shows. I'm going to say it again. The Knicks close games. And part of the reason why they close games is they got Jalen Brunson and he takes over in the fourth quarter. He was awesome. He went for 47 and 10. Playoff career high for him. Most points in a playoff game in franchise history. First Knick with 35 and 10 in back-to-back playoff games. First Knick to go for 40 and 10 in the playoffs. The rest of the team combined for 3 more points than he scored all by himself. He was the anti-Embiid yesterday.
I mean, that's it. I mean, it's not to oversimplify because there's more going on, but if you want to win this kind of series, you got to have the best player on the floor. And Jalen Brunson has been markedly better than Embiid, to Ashley's point, when it's mattered most. And there was a couple moments where, because look, would you agree, Ash, that Brunson's amazing and his basketball IQ is incredible and his instincts are incredible and he's fearless and he's technically amazing, but he's not an incredible athlete and he's not a super tall guy by NBA standards. And he went at Embiid twice that I can think of, went at Embiid and had 2 floaters over him in that fourth quarter. And it was just kind of like an in-your-face. It doesn't matter if I'm a foot shorter than you. It doesn't matter if you're technically a better athlete or a bigger athlete. I'm not afraid of you. I'm going to dominate you. It was, I mean, look, Brunson's been legit for a while, but kind of like Anthony Edwards in the West, that game to me was oh my God, this isn't just a first round thing. This dude is as John, as you said, a real, just as a closer. And my belief in the ability for the Knicks to go deeper is getting stronger and stronger because all hail Jalen Brunson. I'm sorry.
Ash, how did you feel about Embiid giving him a little forearm when he came through the lane?
Well, there's 2 things. I mean, to your point, Bill, I mean, Jalen Brunson struggled a little bit in game 1 and game 2. Game 2, I think he shot 27%. So he really found his groove. And a lot of that you can probably, credit to not having Julius Randle on the floor has put a bigger target on his backs, made it harder to get certain shots. You also don't have that physicality from Brunson like you do with Julius Randle, who's obviously much bigger. So that's a lot of it, but he's found his groove, he's found his niche, and I think he's like in that momentum. In terms of Joel Embiid, it's frustrating, right? Because I've never been a Joel Embiid hater like you, Bill. I actually, for a while, have enjoyed his game, and I feel like earlier on during a lot of the process with the 76ers that, he was getting the short end of the stick because he's an ultimate competitor and he gives his all to the game and his body. But in the last year, I want to say, I don't know, it's frustration with his situation, but he's gone from aggressive and teetering the line of dirty. I don't mind aggression. I don't mind tenacity. I don't mind any of that. I like that in my players. But there have been a lot of things that he has done in this series. I'm like, chill out. Like it's not the WWE, like it's basketball.
It has been dirty.
It's not, it's bordering the line of reckless and dangerous for the other players on the court. And that's where it gets a little like, because if that were Draymond Green, he would have been ejected. And I don't know if it's because Joel Embiid hasn't established that reputation fully yet, and he still teeters back and forth, that you give him the benefit of the doubt. But there are a lot of times that he does things and he knows what he's doing. He wants to play dumb, but I know you know what you're doing, Joel. It's very borderline.
When Brunson came through the lane, I didn't think that one was a big deal. I thought that was just playoff basketball. Like you get bumped harder than that on the subway, but there were plays in this series where you're like, oh, they probably shouldn't have done that. Like was it Josh Hart who was laying on the ground where he kind of like,
he
leg stomped him
on purpose, clearly on purpose.
He
wasn't
sees
great
him on the floor and still attempts to
great.
stomp him on the ground.
Well, it wasn't great, but the Brunson one, like one of my buddies is a Knicks fan. You guys are everywhere now, and he was complaining about it. I'm like, come on, dude. They're like, that happens in basketball. Yeah, the Josh Hart thing wasn't great. I want to mention one more thing too before we go to break. Brunson was amazing. The rest of the Knicks really weren't. Josh Hart had a bad shooting night. Dante DiVincenzo had a bad shooting night until he hit a couple of threes late. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason why the Knicks won that game last night, and I don't think it can be overlooked, is how good they were on the offensive glass. Mm-hmm. Hartenstein was in foul trouble. They decided to go to OG Anunoby to guard Embiid in the fourth quarter. OG was unbelievable. Then they had 15 offensive rebounds. 15. The Knicks closed with a lineup of two guys who are 6'8", two guys who are 6'4", and two guys who are 6'1", and they dominated the boards. That's effort. That's hustle. That's grit. That's tenacity. That is everything that the Sixers really don't have beyond Maxey and Embiid. That team is hyper thin, whereas Tibbs basketball, they're a deeper team. They're a tougher team. When their shot's not falling, doesn't matter. Let's hustle. Let's get to the boards. Credit to the Knicks, man. They're up 3-1 for a reason. Some might say that it should be 2-2. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say that the Knicks certainly deserved game 4. I'm not going to say it. I'm just throwing it out there. But they have been the better team and the deeper team. So credit to the Knicks. We'll see if the Sixers can stay alive. I doubt it. Take a quick break here, and then we're going to get into Clippers and Mavs, and then also the Pacers taking a commanding lead in that series. That's next right here on Beyond the Arc.
Sail GP returns to the beaches of Bermuda. On CBS Sports Network.
Monday edition of Beyond the Arc. John, Ashley, and Bill. Check us out on YouTube. Our page is at Beyond the Arc CBS. Subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment. We clip up all this stuff and throw it up on our YouTube page. All right, Clippers and Mavericks. No Kawhi, and they win again. Clippers go 116-111, almost blow a 31-point lead, but the series is tied. No timetable for Kawhi to return. I guess it doesn't matter when you have somebody as legendarily good, tried and true in the postseason as Ashley's favorite, James Harden, who all of a sudden is good in the postseason. Yeah. He won for 33, 6
The jury is still out. The jury is still out.
He had 15 in the fourth quarter on 6 of 8 shooting.
We never doubted if he was good. He could always play basketball. We doubted if he can care long enough to take this team over the edge. And like I said, the jury is still out.
You and I have been on the accurate James Harden historical postseason disappointment train. And that train has been going for a long time, full speed ahead. And I'll just say this. I'm more than happy to correct myself, to have a guy change. Mm-hmm. It's a great performance. It really was amazing. But I'm with Ash. It doesn't matter. They're going to need him to probably do this again, especially the way Kawhi has played if he plays. It's real if it continues to be real. Yeah. And it doesn't matter if they don't win this series or he doesn't play well late in games. So they need him to be good, John, I think, to win the series. So it's going to be interesting. Maybe he can do it a couple more times.
I thought it was interesting how he got those points in the fourth quarter, because I was like Ashley and you waiting for James Harden to fold in the fourth quarter. And instead, he not only played well and shot well and played well in the clutch. He changed his approach because the Mavs decided to close with Kleba. They didn't have Gafford or Lively out there, so there wasn't as much rim protection. So all of five floaters from James Harden in the fourth quarter. Do you know how many he had during the regular season total? 11. So he just decided to like get into the paint and just float him over Kleba, and they ended up winning the game and not blowing a 31-point lead.
In that
I
series,
just thought it was impressive.
In that 76er series, when James Harden had that amazing game in game 1 and then went missing in the remainder of the series, that was the Eastern Conference Finals, or was that round 2?
No, it was in round 2. But he had a good game. I think it was game 4 as well. It was like 1-4, something like that.
Right now, we're in round 1. You don't have Kawhi. You're going against the Mavs, who, it seems like night in and night out, you get a different version of them. Sometimes they're clicking all cylinders. Sometimes they're struggling. I will give credit to James Harden where credit is due, that he's having an amazing series right now. No one's ever doubted that James Harden can play basketball. We have said time and time again, at least I have, when he cares, he is the absolute best, one of the best in the league still to this day. When he doesn't, you feel it tremendously. Everything has been kind of going the way of the Clippers, even in the games that they have lost. There's only been one blowout, I believe. So it's not like the formula is there for James Harden to show James Harden-ness, if you will. I will wait until this team faces some real adversity to see if James Harden is a new individual. I am still not sold on James Harden just yet.
Can't believe I'm going to be the James Harden defender here, but I'll do it. You lose this game, you go down 3-1. The series is basically over, and you are about, as John noted, or maybe ask you, to blow a 30-point lead, which is a humiliation and just like soul destroying. That is a pressure-packed moment. Not just you're going to be down 3-1, but oh my God, we were up 30 points and we're about to blow this game. We're going to look like a bunch of losers. And so for me, his fourth quarter performance, that context is pressure-packed, even if we're not at the end of the series and it's not an elimination game. So I'm open to the idea that maybe he's just found a place for whatever reason where the best version of himself is finally going to come out in the playoffs. I hope so, because who likes rooting for guys to fail? I'd love to see people succeed. Yeah. And that is not your typical game 4, just because I think of the circumstances in which he did that fourth quarter excellence.
We should also mention that PG was awesome in this game, 33 and 8, 7 3-pointers, still hasn't signed his extension. Think he's going to look awesome in Philadelphia next year.
I'm coming around.
I have a question for you guys. Any concern, because the series is tied, right? Luka has put up some nice counting stats, had a triple-double last night, 29, 10, and 10. But he said he feels like Kyrie went for 40. Kyrie was super efficient per usual. He's always pretty efficient from the field. Luka said afterwards that he feels like he's letting Kyrie down. In this series, he is shooting just 38.6% from the floor and 26.5% from 3. A lot of shots for not a lot of production.
So this is something I wrote about and we talked about, which is a view out there that as great as Luka is, you can really scheme him much more effectively because it's specific over the course of a long series than you can in the regular season. Make life hard on him, let it get his stats, but not have it be efficient or for his teammates effective. So I think, Ash, there's a lot of series to go, and the Mavs can obviously win the series and a lot can happen, but I do think it's a legitimate point. And also, I think it's worth noting the guy's only been out of the first round once. He made the conference finals. And in retrospect, Jalen Brunson's presence on that team, remember, Brunson carried them in the first round of that series because Luka was hurt.
Yeah.
It's a big asterisk in terms of, he's gotten out once, Luka, but he did it with Jalen Brunson, who is looking like a better playoff basketball player right now, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? But this kind of goes back to what we were kind of concerned about earlier in the season when it came to the Mavs, before it seemed like they figured it out around All-Star break, or a little bit after All-Star break, rather, where they're starting to play better defensively. Kyrie and Luka seem to be on the same page. That chemistry seems to be just a lot more solid than it was earlier in their combined in earlier their pairing, rather. You're kind of seeing it go backwards a little bit. And this was one of the things that a lot of people had question marks about. Can these two guys play well together as a duo consistently? Not one has a really good game and the other is okay, and not vice versa, and not both of them kind of mediocre. Can they both have exceptional games at the same time? And throughout this series, it kind of seems like you're going back to that question mark rather than moving further away from it. Like they can. I feel like the meter's kind of going a little bit more this way. Like, can they? Because you haven't really seen it except for maybe one game in this entire series. And I think that's going to be concerning if the Mavs do move on. How much of a duo of those two that's conducive for winning consistently are you going to get? I think that's still the biggest question mark with this team.
One of these teams is going to move on and breathe a sigh of relief, and one of these teams is going to. We're just talking about the Suns having a tough offseason. Whoever doesn't come out of this is going to have a tough offseason. All right,
Amen.
Last series that we have to hit that changed over the weekend: Bucks and Pacers. No Giannis again because of the calf. This time, no Dame either. All of a sudden over the weekend, an Achilles strain popped up. That's not great. Pacers win this game 126-113. They take a commanding 3-1 lead. All 5 Bucks had a negative plus minus. All 5 Pacers were in the positive. Third game, by the way, Bill and I talked about how great the Pacers have been moving the ball. Third game with 30 or more assists. No other team in the NBA in this playoffs has even one of those games. They just have looked amazing. Miles Turner had a nice game. Halliburton, by the way, I had the game on Friday. Halliburton had a rough shooting night that night. Ended up getting the game winner. They just decided to Carlisle went to him, drew it up. He ended up hitting the game winner. And then in this game, he shot 50% from the floor, finally got his shot to fall. Pacers look like they're moving on.
And Bobby Portis Jr. went and got himself kicked out of the game early on.
Yes, he did.
Critically important that he play. So again, this is like an upside down Monday. I'm going to defend Harden. I'm going to defend Doc. I actually thought the Bucks were going to get blown out of the building, especially when Portis went, because how deflating that would be. And I thought credit to Milwaukee. They kept that game close for a lot longer than you might think just looking at the final score. But it's all over with the shout now. I mean, it's the Bucks. Yeah. I do think it's a silver lining because I think if you're John Horst and you don't want to get fired, you got an excuse. If you're Doc Rivers and you don't want all that heat, you've got an excuse. And you get a chance now for Dame and Giannis to don't rush these guys out there, but to get healthy, reset next year. I think it does buy that organization some relief because you can just blame injuries on what might have been a disappointing season anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Milwaukee fought. I mean, Brook Lopez, 27 points. They were killing Indiana in points in the paint. They were killing them in second chance opportunities, but Indiana was killing them with that 3 ball, and that made all the difference. But I feel like, when you don't have Giannis, when you don't have Dame, you lose that big part of your game, right? Those are probably your best 3-point shooters, probably more Dame than Giannis. So I don't know how you can sustain or even give yourself a chance to win this series when you can't really shoot the 3 ball because your best 3-point shooter is not on the floor. You can try to go ahead and win the battle in the paint. You can try to go ahead and win the battle on the boards. But if you can't go ahead and compete when Indiana starts draining threes, I don't really know what you can do. 3 beats 2 every time. So it's unfortunate because
more than 2.
We'll never know what this team, at least this season, we won't know if it was Doc Rivers that failed them or if it's the injuries that failed them. And as a Doc Rivers hater, that sucks for us. But I mean, no, to be honest, like there's really nothing that you can.
I mean, if you're the Bucks, it's exactly what Bill said. Like you look at this and you go, oh, well, what we're supposed to do. We brought in Doc mid-season, then we got a bunch of injuries. It just gives them an excuse to run it back next season and see what happens. I just want to run through briefly the 3 games tonight. Celtics and the Heat. Celtics are minus 10.5. OKC and the Pelicans. Pelicans are up 3-0. And then, by the way, Mark Dagnall, as expected, won Coach of the Year. And then the Nugs and the Lakers. Nugs are up 3-0. All of the favorites that you would expect in this game. Do we think Pelicans or Lakers have any shot to avoid a sweep here?
Jamal Murray doesn't play, which is possible. Maybe
gentleman's sweep, but a gentleman's sweep is a sweep to me.
Yeah, I mean, no, none of these series are crooning toward a surprise, even if there is, I guess, a bit of a surprise. Do either of you give the Heat a chance? Because you win one of your games on your home court after what happened in Boston, and it feels different. I'm not. But I probably should.
I think the issue is Boston saw what type of team they need to be in order to close this series out. And with Boston, if you look at that game, it's not like they were out there draining threes, which I think can be to their detriment sometimes. I think they fall a little too much in love with the 3 ball and they ignore every other part of their offense and defense. In that game, they shot better they shot better from the field. They were more points in the paint. They didn't really rely on the 3 ball. Miami shot better from the 3 technically, but they played defense for all 4 quarters. So even when Miami went on their little run in the third quarter, top of the 4th, Boston kept their foot on the defensive gas, and that's ultimately what won them this game. So I don't know if Miami even has the manpower to compete when Boston plays like that. If they're not relying on the 3 ball and you can't shut them down like that, I mean, it's Porzingis was in his bag. Like it's hard.
The game 2 game plan is the game plan. Shoot a lot of threes, hope they go in. Pelicans, I think, are not long for this world. And then the Lakers look like they're about to get gentlemanly swept 4-1 in that. But hey, I mean, most competitive gentleman's sweep ever.
Yeah.
They can hang on that.
Gentleman's sweep.
We'll see if Darvin Ham still has a job. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Tell a friend about our show. Help people find it. We're going to be back at it tomorrow. Just going to be Ash and Bill tomorrow. But for now, for our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, for Ashley Nicole Moss, I'm John Gonzalez. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. They will see you tomorrow.